I was dying. Or at least, that's what it felt like. Pain ripped through my abdomen like a hot knife, twisting deeper with every breath. I could barely hold my phone, my fingers shaking as I clutched it in desperation. My 2-year-old twins, Alex and Bella, sat on the hospital bed beside me, their big, innocent eyes watching as I winced in agony. I had no one else to call. No one. I dialed my mother's number, silently praying that for once in my life, she would put me first. She picked up after 3 rings, her voice dripping with irritation. "Natasha, we're about to head out. This better be important." My heart was hammering against my ribs. I didn't have time for her games. "Mom, I need you and Dad to take the twins. I'm in the hospital. It's serious. I have internal bleeding. They're taking me into surgery soon." Silence, then a scoff. "Oh, Natasha, you're being dramatic again," she said, followed by a loud sigh. "Haven't we raised you to be independent?" Independent? I had been supporting them financially for years, paying their bills, covering their mortgage, even sending them extra money whenever they needed it. And now, the one time I asked them for help? Mom, I could die." My voice cracked, my throat tightening. "The doctor said—" "We have plans," she interrupted sharply. "We got these Elton John tickets months ago, front row. We're not missing it just because you suddenly need help." I felt my stomach drop, the pain intensifying. "Please," I whispered. "I have no one else. I just need you to watch them for one night." My father's voice cut through, deep and cold. "You're becoming a real nuisance, Natasha. A burden." A burden. I couldn't breathe. My own parents, the people I had taken care of financially for the last 3 years, just called me a burden. "We're retired now," my father continued. "We deserve to enjoy our lives, not be babysitters to your mistakes." My mistakes. My beautiful twins, who had already lost their father in a tragic accident 6 months ago, were mistakes to them? Tears burned in my eyes as my mother spoke again, her voice laced with impatience. "Look, we need to go. I'm sorry you're sick or whatever, but we're not changing our plans. Figure it out." And then, just like that, she hung up. I stared at my phone, the call screen disappearing. My fingers felt numb. A concert. A concert was more important to them than their own daughter's life. More important than their only grandchildren. I bit my lip hard to keep the sob from escaping. My body trembled, whether from pain or heartbreak, I didn't know. My twins kept looking at me, sensing something was wrong. A nurse named Valerie entered the room, her brows knitted in concern as she saw the tears streaming down my face. "What's wrong?" I swallowed hard. "I have no one to take care of my kids," I whispered. Her face softened. "I have a friend, a nanny. She specializes in childhood trauma. I can call her for you." A stranger, a complete stranger, was willing to help me more than my own family. Something inside me snapped. My parents had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. I took a deep breath and wiped my tears. "Yes," I said. "Call her." And just like that, I decided. I was done being their ATM. The pain was unbearable, but the realization of my parents' betrayal hurt even more. As I lay in the hospital bed, hooked up to an IV, I forced myself to think past the hurt, past the exhaustion. I had given them everything, everything. When they retired early and said they were struggling, I helped them. When they wanted to redo their kitchen, I sent them money. When they complained about the rising costs of living, I increased the amount I gave them every month. And when my husband, the love of my life, died suddenly in a car crash, leaving me alone with 2 babies, I still put them first. I still made sure their mortgage was covered. I still sent them $2,500 every month. And yet, when I needed them the most, when I was about to be cut open on an operating table, not knowing if I'd wake up again, I was a burden, a nuisance. My stomach twisted, but this time it wasn't just from the internal bleeding. It was rage. I had spent my entire life chasing their approval, trying to be the good daughter, the responsible one, the dependable one. Not anymore. I forced my shaky fingers to grab my phone. There were already 5 missed calls from my parents. I ignored them. Instead, I opened my banking app and canceled the automatic transfers to their account. No warning, no explanation. I was done. Then I opened my messages. I typed out a single text. "I will no longer be providing financial support. My children and I deserve better. Don't contact me again." And I hit send. For the first time in years, I felt something other than exhaustion. Relief. I woke up hours later, groggy from the anesthesia. My throat was dry, my body felt weak, but I was alive. Valerie was there, sitting beside my bed with a smile. "The surgery went well. You're going to be okay." I exhaled shakily, nodding. My gaze flickered to the small couch in the corner of the room. My twins were there, safe and sound, fast asleep, and beside them, a woman I had never met before. Olivia, the nanny Valerie had called. She was holding Bella's tiny hand, humming softly as she kept watch over them. A complete stranger had been more of a parent to them in one night than my own mother had been in years. I blinked back tears and turned my phone back on. 27 missed calls. The texts came flooding in. "You can't just cut us off like this. We have bills, Natasha. We planned a cruise next month. The tickets are non-refundable." Not a single message asking if I had survived the surgery. Not one. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. This wasn't just neglect. This was who they had always been. They never loved me. Not really. They loved what I could do for them. They loved my money. And now? They were about to find out what life was like without me. I let my phone drop onto the hospital bed beside me, the screen still lighting up every few seconds with another desperate call or text from my parents. But I ignored it. Let them panic. Let them realize that, for the first time in their lives, they weren't going to get their way. I had always been the reliable one, the responsible one, the financial safety net they never appreciated, only expected. And now that safety net was gone. I could picture it clearly. My mother pacing back and forth in their oversized kitchen, clutching her phone with manicured nails, wailing about how ungrateful I was. My father sitting at the dining table, a deep frown on his face, trying to figure out how they were going to pay their mortgage without my money. They had spent years living beyond their means, assuming I would always be there to bail them out. Not anymore. The hospital beeped softly around me. Valerie, the nurse who had been taking care of me, adjusted my IV with a kind smile. "You look like someone who just lifted a 100-pound weight off their shoulders." I let out a breath. "More like 200 pounds. She chuckled. "Well, I'd say you made the right decision." She glanced toward Olivia, the nanny she had called, who was still sitting quietly with my twins. "You've got people who care about you. You don't need to waste your energy on the ones who don't." She was right, but my parents weren't going to let go so easily. A part of me knew this was just the beginning, and I was ready for it. The first voicemail was exactly what I expected. "Natasha, what the hell is this? You canceled the transfer? What are we supposed to do now? Do you even care what you've done to us?" Delete. The second voicemail was more of the same. "Sweetheart, we raised you better than this. Family takes care of each other. We depend on you." Delete. By the time I got to the 16th voicemail, my father's tone had changed. "This is your fault. You're the one who told us we could retire early. You're the one who convinced us we'd be fine. You made a commitment to help us. And now you're just, what, throwing us away like trash?" I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. I had never once told them to retire early. They had chosen to quit their jobs and spend their savings on vacations, a new kitchen, luxury furniture, and they had done it expecting me to keep paying their bills. I wasn't their daughter to them. I was an investment. And now, that investment was gone. I scrolled through my messages, barely suppressing the urge to laugh. "You're being dramatic, Natasha. We had to dip into our cruise fund because of you." What kind of daughter abandons her parents like this? Not a single message asking if I was okay. Not one. And then, a message from Jessica, my younger sister. "Mom and Dad just told me you had some kind of minor surgery. Why are they freaking out about money?" I stared at my phone, rage bubbling up inside me. Of course. They had lied to Jessica, made it seem like I was just being dramatic so they wouldn't look bad. I took a deep breath and started typing. It wasn't a minor surgery, it was emergency surgery for internal bleeding. I could have died. They refused to watch the twins because they had concert tickets. That's why I cut them off. Jessica's response came immediately. "What? Oh my God, I had no idea. They told me you just wanted them to babysit for no reason. I would have helped if I knew." I squeezed my eyes shut. Of course she would have. Because Jessica, for all her flaws, wasn't cruel. She had just been raised to believe she was more important than me. Just like I had been raised to believe I was less. Maybe now she would finally see the truth. It took exactly 2 weeks for my parents' carefully constructed lives to start crumbling. Jessica called me one night, her voice urgent. They're in full panic mode, Natasha. I went over there for dinner, and all they did was fight about money. They didn't want to tell me the truth, but I finally got it out of them. I leaned back against my pillows, feeling the satisfaction settle in my chest. And? She hesitated. They're in a lot worse shape than they let on. They didn't just depend on your money. They took out a second mortgage on the house last year. They thought you'd just keep paying, so they spent the money on a boat and a timeshare. I actually burst out laughing. Jessica didn't join me. Natasha, they might lose the house. Oh, you mean the house they prioritized over my life? I asked. The house that was more important than their own grandchildren's safety? I'm not saying you should help them, she said quickly. I just thought you should know. I did know, and I didn't care. The knock on my door came 3 days later. I didn't have to check the peephole. I knew who it was. I opened it just enough to see them standing there. My mother clutching her expensive handbag, her expression pinched with forced concern. My father, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, his jaw tight with barely contained anger. We need to talk, my father said. I arched an eyebrow. About what? He let out a breath, as if this were difficult for him. We're having some financial difficulties? I smiled. I know. They blinked, caught off guard. Jessica must have told them she'd spoken to me. My mother's lip trembled. Natasha, sweetheart, we've come to depend on that money. You? I don't care. Silence. My father's eyes flashed. You don't care if we lose the house? I shrugged. Did you care if I died on an operating table? That shut him up. My mother reached for my hand, but I pulled back. We just made one mistake, she pleaded. Are you really going to punish us for that? I tilted my head. This isn't punishment, it's consequence. Her face crumpled. My father, however, wasn't done. You don't understand, he snapped. We're your parents. You have an obligation to help us. I shook my head slowly. My only obligation is to my kids, and I would never treat them the way you treated me. My father's jaw clenched. My mother sniffled, but neither of them had anything else to say. So I smiled, and I shut the door in their faces. Let them figure out how to pay for their own damn mortgage. 3 months had passed since I cut my parents off, and I had never felt so free. No more phone calls demanding money, no more guilt-tripping about their sacrifices, no more treating me like their personal bank. For the first time in years, I could actually focus on myself and my children. But my parents? They weren't handling things so well. Jessica had been keeping me updated whether I asked for it or not. They're getting desperate, Natasha, she said over the phone one night. They had to sell the boat. I smirked. Good. They tried to hold on to it, she continued. Dad was furious. He kept saying they'd take a huge loss. But Mom finally convinced him they had no choice. They're behind on their mortgage, like way behind. I wasn't surprised. They had built their entire lifestyle around my money. Lavish vacations, expensive dinners, new furniture every year. They never imagined that I'd actually stop paying. Jessica, I said, leaning back on my couch, are they finally admitting that they screwed themselves over? Or are they still playing the "our daughter betrayed us" game? Jessica hesitated. Both. I laughed. Of course. They're still telling everyone you abandoned them, she admitted. But privately, they know they're screwed, and now they're panicking? Panic wasn't enough. They had panicked when I was a child, panicked when I got sick, panicked when bills were tight. But I had always been the solution. Now there was no solution for them. Not anymore. 2 weeks later, another knock at my door. I almost didn't answer it. But then I thought, this could be entertaining. I opened the door just enough to see my parents standing there. This time, my mother didn't look polished and put together. Her hair was a little frizzier than usual, her eyes slightly red. My father, however, still had that entitled look on his face, like he had never been told no in his life. What do you want? I asked flatly. Natasha? My mother started, her voice softer than usual. Please, we need your help. I crossed my arms. Funny, I needed your help once. You remember that, right? You remember the whole emergency surgery thing? My father clenched his jaw. We apologized for that. I laughed. No, you didn't. You just said I was being dramatic. Silence. My mother swallowed hard. We didn't think it was serious. You didn't care if it was serious, I corrected, because Elton John was more important than your own daughter's life. My father exhaled harshly through his nose. We're here because we need $144,000 to catch up on the mortgage. I blinked. Excuse me? We're going to lose the house, Natasha, my mother whispered. The bank gave us 60 days. If we don't come up with the money, they're taking it. I stared at them. They had come to my door after months of ignoring my existence to ask for 6 figures. Like I was just supposed to hand it over. I leaned against the doorframe. Sell the timeshare. We can't, my mother whined. The market is bad. Sell your jewelry, I said, glancing at the gold necklace and diamond earrings she was still wearing. Her hand flew to her chest. But these were gifts. I smiled coldly. So was my money, and you wasted it. My father's expression darkened. You think this is funny? I shrugged. I think it's pathetic. His fists clenched at his sides. We raised you, Natasha. And I paid you back, I shot back, for years. And now, you're on your own. My mother actually started crying. We don't know what to do, she sobbed. We never thought you'd actually cut us off. I tilted my head. That's the problem, isn't it? You never thought I'd stand up for myself. I stepped back inside and slammed the door in their faces. The next morning, Jessica called. You are not going to believe what they just did. I rubbed my temples. I'm guessing it's something stupid. Oh, it's beyond stupid, she said, almost laughing. They sent a group email to the entire family. I sat up. What? She cleared her throat, then read it aloud. Dearest family, we are heartbroken to share that our own daughter, Natasha, has abandoned us in our time of greatest need. After everything we sacrificed for her, she has cruelly left us to suffer financially. We are at risk of losing our home, the very home we raised our children in. We never imagined our own flesh and blood would betray us like this. I actually laughed out loud. Oh my God, I said, wiping tears from my eyes. They're playing the victim. Oh, it gets better, Jessica said, still reading. We are devastated by Natasha's actions, but we are proud parents who refuse to beg. We only ask for your support in this difficult time. If anyone can spare a little extra to help us save our home, please reach out. I nearly choked on my own laughter. They're asking the family for money? Jessica lost it. They literally made it sound like you forced them into bankruptcy, like you just randomly cut them off for no reason. I shook my head, still grinning. And how's the family reacting? Jessica took a deep breath. So, you know Michael? Yeah? Well, Michael's wife replied to the whole family. I sat up straighter. Oh, this is going to be good. Jessica cleared her throat again. Uncle Robert, didn't you just buy a brand new boat last year? And Aunt Diana, wasn't that a new diamond tennis bracelet you were showing off at Thanksgiving? I lost it. Jessica kept going. Are you seriously telling us you sacrificed everything for Natasha while spending thousands on luxury items? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you used her money to fund your lifestyle. And now that she's done paying, you want us to take over? Jessica took a deep breath. And then, other family members started agreeing with her. I pressed a hand to my mouth. Oh my God! Yeah, Jessica said, her voice dripping with amusement. They completely exposed Mom and Dad. People started bringing up old stories, how they used to brag about how much you sent them every month, how they went on a luxury cruise right after you had twins. I let out a long breath. So, what happened? Jessica giggled. They deleted the email. I nearly fell off the couch. They just pretended it never happened? Oh yeah, and they're so embarrassed. Mom's not answering calls. Dad's furious. I grinned. Good. They wanted to play the victim? Too bad, because the truth had finally come out. And this time, there was no hiding from it. The first foreclosure notice arrived 3 months after I cut my parents off. Jessica called me, her voice breathless. They're in full-blown crisis mode now. I leaned back on my couch, watching my twins play on the floor. Oh, what happened? She sighed. The bank gave them 60 days to catch up on payments or they're losing the house. I smirked. Guess that second mortgage wasn't such a smart move, huh? Jessica hesitated. Natasha, I know you don't care, but I've never seen them this desperate. Dad's been calling everyone trying to borrow money. I'm sure he has. They asked Aunt Patty for help, but she told them, and I quote, I don't finance stupidity. I laughed. I knew I liked Aunt Patty. They also asked Uncle Ray, and he just sent them a job application. I wheezed. Wait. Please tell me that actually happened. Oh, it happened? Dad was furious. He kept ranting about how family should help each other. I rolled my eyes. Funny, they weren't so concerned about family helping each other when I needed them. Jessica was silent for a moment. You really don't feel bad for them at all? I exhaled slowly, looking at my kids. Do you know what Mom told me when I begged her to help me before my surgery? Jessica was quiet. I continued. She told me they had plans, that they deserved to enjoy their lives, while I was bleeding internally, not knowing if I'd wake up to see my own children again. Jessica sighed. Yeah, I get it. I rubbed my temples. They made their choices, now they can live with them. And for the first time, they couldn't manipulate their way out of it. 3 weeks later, another knock at my door. I almost didn't answer, but then I thought, this is going to be fun. I opened the door to find them standing there. Only this time, they didn't look entitled anymore. They looked defeated. My father's usual arrogance was gone, replaced by something I had never seen before. Fear. We lost the house, my mother whispered. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Oh? She nodded, eyes glossy with unshed tears. We tried everything, Natasha, but we couldn't keep up with the payments. We're being forced to sell. I tilted my head. So sell it. My father clenched his fists. Do you know how much money we're losing because of this? We're going to have to move into a condo. A tiny, disgusting little place. I held up a hand. Let me stop you right there. Are you seriously complaining about having to move into a condo? My mother sniffled. We worked so hard for that house. I scoffed. I worked hard for that house. I'm the one who paid your mortgage for 3 years while raising 2 babies alone. Neither of them spoke. I took a slow breath. So what exactly do you want from me? My father swallowed hard. We were hoping maybe you could help us get back on our feet. I blinked. By help, you mean give you money. My mother gave me a hopeful smile. Just enough to buy a new place, a fresh start. I stared at them. You want me to buy you another house? My father had the audacity to nod. It wouldn't have to be as big, of course. I burst out laughing. They both flinched. Oh my God, I wheezed. You two are unbelievable. My mother pouted. Natasha, were your parents? Number your leeches. My father's eyes darkened. You really don't care if we end up on the streets? I took a step forward. Did you care if I died on an operating table? Silence. That's what I thought. I grabbed the door handle. Good luck with your condo. And I shut the door. I could hear my mother sobbing on the other side. I didn't care. The next day, Jessica called. You might want to sit down for this one, she said. Oh God, what now? They finally admitted it. I frowned. Admitted what? Jessica took a deep breath. They never actually thought you'd cut them off. They assumed you'd get mad for a few weeks and then start sending money again. I laughed bitterly. So all this time, they thought they could just manipulate me back into paying for them? Yep, I shook my head. They never respected me. No, Jessica said softly. I don't think they did. I exhaled slowly. And now, Jessica hesitated. They're different. It's weird. Dad's working a part-time job at a hardware store. Mom's selling stuff online. They're still embarrassed, but I think they're finally realizing they did this to themselves. I wasn't sure how I felt about that, because after years of being treated like their personal ATM, could they really change? Or was this just another tactic? 6 months passed. I had moved into a new home with a backyard for the twins. My small business designing memorial websites was booming. I had a real support system. Friends, neighbors, even Jessica, who had grown closer to me than ever before. I had built something real. And then, one day, an envelope arrived in the mail. From my mother. I almost threw it away. But then curiosity got the best of me. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. I've had time to reflect on my mistakes. Watching you build a life without our help has forced me to confront some painful truths. I was jealous of your independence, your resilience. I resented that you didn't need me the way I needed my own mother, but now I see that you did need me, just not in the way I wanted to be needed, and I failed you. I stared at the words, my heart pounding. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that I understand now. And I'm sorry. I didn't know how to feel. For the first time, it didn't feel like manipulation. Jessica called later that night. Mom's been in therapy, she said quietly. She's been working through a lot, and Dad's different too. He's actually humble now. I exhaled. I don't know if I can trust them again. Jessica was silent for a moment. I don't think they expect you to. I stared at the letter. I didn't know what to do. But for the first time, the choice was mine. And no matter what, I knew one thing. I wasn't that desperate, dependent daughter anymore. I was free.